Have you ever felt alone in your pain? As if no one could truly understand you? And what if I told you that you're not the only one experiencing this suffering, but more importantly, what if I told you that there is a way out? What would you say? The point is, do you really want to stay stuck in this situation, or are you ready to change? If you wish, in this video, we will see why your suffering is not unique, but shared. How can you transform pain into a tool for growth? Why do some people get stuck in complaints while others change? And what is the first concrete step to break free from frustration and take back control of your life? If you don't know me, let me introduce myself. I am Daniela Coin, a professional educator and Jungian coach specializing in personal and relational growth for men. So I help men feel better about themselves and as a result have more beautiful and healthier relationships with women. Often when we suffer, we have the feeling of being alone in our pain. It has surely happened to you as well. We look at others and think that their life is easier, that they have found their balance, that they don't face the same fears and difficulties as we do. But this is an illusion. It is an effect of our mind which, as demonstrated by the phenomenon of pluralistic ignorance studied in social psychology, makes us believe that our problems are unique, while in reality many people around us are experiencing the exact same emotions as we are. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology demonstrated that we tend to underestimate how much others suffer internally. And this happens because people only show us a controlled and filtered version of their lives. On social media, at work, and in daily interactions, most people wear a mask, let's call it that, of confidence, a mask of serenity, and naturally hide their insecurities, anxieties, and vulnerabilities. Because we have been taught that vulnerabilities and insecurities are not acceptable, they belong to weak people. And if you show yourself as insecure and vulnerable, people will take advantage of you, so everyone hides it. But if we dig a little deeper, we discover that suffering is universal and shared by everyone. It is a condition of being human. And understanding this is essential because often pain intensifies. Precisely when we feel alone and isolated, convinced that no one can understand us. But the truth is that there are people who have walked the same path as you and have come out stronger. The difference, in fact, lies in the choices they made. Reality, in itself, is neither positive nor negative, but neutral. And what happens in the world has no intrinsic meaning. It is we who interpret it based on our history, our emotions, our beliefs, and convictions. It is our reaction to what exists that determines the effect it has on us. Sadhguru, for example, an Indian mystic, states that human beings suffer from their own memory and imagination. And this means that, in other words, they suffer for what does not exist. They think about the past, they think about what the future might be. Most of our suffering, however, is not caused by actual events, but by the thoughts and emotions we associate with them. We continuously relive the wounds of the past, amplifying them with memory, and we fear the future by constructing catastrophic mental scenarios that more often than not will never actually happen. In this way, however, we trap ourselves in a cycle of self-induced suffering because our mind does not distinguish between what is actually happening and what we imagine, or we recall with an intense emotional charge. In practice, if we are having a thought and experiencing emotions associated with that thought, even if it is not actually happening, our brain functions in exactly the same way. The strange thing is that we use this to our disadvantage instead of to our advantage. If we pause for a moment and observe the present without the constructs of the past and fears of the future, we will realize that in this very moment, there is nothing to suffer from. Suffering indeed exists only when we entirely and completely identify with our thoughts and emotions, truly forgetting that they are just a part of us and not our true essence. True power lies in understanding that we have the ability to choose our reaction to what happens. We can remain prisoners of the mind, continuing to suffer for what does not exist, or we can learn to observe it and deactivate these mechanisms, returning to the present moment where reality is simply what it is. But since someone might say, Daniela, what if I have an illness, if I am dying, if I am suffering, if my child has died, am I truly suffering? Yes. Even when suffering is truly real and justified, as in these cases, which are still rare because most people suffer over trivial things, not serious and real issues, still, even when suffering is truly justified, we should consider this. Some men, when faced with real suffering, react in certain ways, while other men and women react differently. Some people withdraw into themselves and become apathetic, cynical, or even depressed. Others, however, use pain as a lever for change, for growth, to become better, or at the very least, to understand themselves. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps, wrote in his book Man's Search for Meaning. He describes how, even in the most extreme conditions, the difference between those who gave up internally and those who found, instead, a reason to exist was determined by the meaning they attributed to suffering. Frankl founded logotherapy precisely on this principle. It is not what happens to us that defines us, but the meaning we give to events. And in the same way in your life, you can choose whether to remain stuck in a narrative of victimhood, or instead, to use pain as a teacher, as an opportunity to transform yourself into a stronger version of who you are, a more aware, more centered, and deeper version. And on this note, I can tell you one thing. If you feel stuck in emotional loneliness, in the fear of not being enough, or in the confusion about what it truly means to be a man of value, then the time has come to take a concrete step toward change. My spring mini-courses of 2025 this year have been created precisely to guide you on this path of transformation. They consist of 3 live sessions at the end of March, the end of April, and the end of May. They help you, if you wish, to develop centeredness, acquire emotional and mental value, and cultivate masculinity, a conscious masculinity, balancing vulnerability and leadership to become a centered and confident man. These modules are designed for those who no longer want to remain stagnant, but seek to acquire concrete tools, with plenty of exercises to transform your life and the way you relate to others. You can find all the details about the spring mini courses below in the video description. Click on More to open the drop-down, or in the first comment pinned at the top of this video. So, let's continue our discussion on suffering. We were saying that suffering has a purpose, which is essentially to wake you up. In psychology, suffering is a warning signal, and even Carl Gustav Jung spoke about the shadow, the part of us that we hide or ignore. But if it is repressed for too long, it eventually emerges in a destructive way. And when we experience emotional pain, anxiety, frustration, or a sense of emptiness, it is because there is something within us that requires attention. And if you are not paying attention to this part of yourself, you may experience frustrations or negative events, which tend to recur in your life. A study conducted by Stanford University found that people who accept their pain and face it consciously, without repressing or denying it, develop greater resilience and long-term psychological and physical well-being. And this means that suffering is not an enemy you need to fight and push away, but a message you need to listen to. What is your pain trying to tell you? Maybe it's telling you to stop repeating certain self-destructive patterns and that it might be time to put an end to toxic relationships. Or maybe you should try doing that thing you've wanted to do your whole life but haven't done yet. Or perhaps you need to take full control of your life and stop postponing the things you desire, the things you want to do, and the things you believe in. If you keep ignoring all of this, your subconscious will find other, less pleasant ways to manifest itself. Insomnia, chronic anxiety, outbursts of anger, physical somatization, feelings of discomfort and restlessness, sadness, a sense of loneliness, and even depression. But if you listen to what your body and mind are trying to tell you, you can transform all of this into a driving force for your growth. Obviously, the key lies in action, not in complaining. Complaining, in which some of my commenters are absolute champions, is the refuge of those who have given up. The people who say, Daniela, but it's actually difficult, but I can't do it, I've already tried and things didn't work out. Or, I've made some improvements, but my life hasn't changed. Or even better, why should I change if others don't change? All of these are ways to vent frustration without actually doing anything to bring about real change. Is it a shortcoming? A lack of taking responsibility for one's own life? Do you know what the problem is? That one day when you reach 90 years old, and I hope you do, you'll say, maybe I wasted my life, I could have done so many wonderful things, and I didn't. I could have lived a happier life, but instead I spent my time complaining and doing nothing. And maybe at 90 years old, you'll still be blaming others, or maybe not, because you'll be a little wiser. And you'll realize that you had the chance to do so many things, but you didn't. I would like to prevent you from reaching 90 years old before realizing this. If you can become aware of it sooner, even better. Certainly, complaining can give you some temporary relief, but in the long run, it creates a vicious cycle. The more you complain, the more you reinforce the belief that you are powerless in the face of life. And that is not true. In psychology, in fact, there is a concept called learned helplessness, which was developed by the psychologist Martin Seligman. And his studies, in fact, have shown that when an individual repeatedly experiences negative situations without being able to change them, they begin to believe that they have no control over their own life, even when new opportunities arise. And you might say, Daniela, but it's not my fault if there are situations that I can't change. And the answer is that some situations cannot be changed, but these are situations that do not actually have the power to change our happiness, or not. If I want to be 1.80 meters tall, but I am 1.60 meters tall, and I cannot change that, and if I choose to be sad about it, that is my choice. There are many people who are 1.60 meters tall and are happy. For example, I don't care at all about being tall, 1.60, and not being 180 tall. But for many people, especially for many men, height is an objective problem, even if they are surrounded by shorter people, including men who have found love and are still living a happy and fulfilling life. And you might say, yes, but Daniela, if I've been diagnosed with a tumor and I'm dying, how can I be happy? There are also people who are about to die, and they are still able to live life to the fullest and be happy. Obviously, I'm giving these examples to illustrate extremes, but most of your problems are not actually serious life or death issues. These are problems that exist in your mind. Many people remain stuck in this limiting mindset without realizing that they can actually break free from it whenever they choose. How do you do that? Through action. Even a small change. Maybe you can do something like signing up for a course. If you're afraid of talking to people, start a new routine. If you're not satisfied with your body, set a boundary in a toxic relationship. If you're not satisfied with the relationships around you, even these small actions can break recurring patterns that harm you and help you regain control of your life. At the core of it, so that you can finally feel better, I will also talk about all of this in the Spring 2025 mini-courses. I repeat, you can find the link below, both in the description and in the first comment. Pre-register to get a 50% discount. And remember that personal growth is a real, concrete concept, made up of precise steps. If today you feel lost, confused, and stuck, it's because you haven't yet learned a clear method to transform your suffering into a source of growth. But there is a way to do it, and you don't have to figure it out on your own. Over the course of the 3 evening sessions of the 3 mini-courses, I will explain exactly how to feel better and how to get more out of your life, how to achieve what you feel you deserve. Obviously, on your part, all that is required is a real and concrete willingness to do something to feel better. So start with a very simple action. By clicking the link below, take a look at the page, and on the page, you will also find the form to pre-register. Pre-registration is not binding for purchase, but I encourage and invite you to participate, because these courses have been specifically designed by me to improve your personal, romantic, and social life in general. I'll briefly mention in closing what all the modules are about. The first one is titled Develop Centeredness and Overcome Loneliness and Need. It helps you break free from the mindset of emotional scarcity, develop emotional independence, and build healthy and fulfilling relationships. The second module is titled Gain Emotional and Mental Value, Become a Man of Impact. It helps you develop an attractive and magnetic personality based on emotional intelligence, effective communication, and relational value. The third module, finally, is focused on conscious masculinity, balancing vulnerability and leadership, and helps you build a well-balanced masculinity. That combines determination with emotional intelligence and the ability to lead your life and relationships. The modules can also be taken separately. You don't have to complete all of them, but my advice is to follow them, all three in order. The dates will be March 31st, April 21st for the second, and May 26th for the last one. I'll be waiting for you. You can find all the other information in the links I've provided, both in the description and in the first comment. And finally, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'll leave a button here for you to do so.